Hello and welcome back. My name is Nathan House and I am with the Church of Christ in Houston, California. And if you could like or subscribe to this video, that would be great. We're going to be doing our second lesson on purity. And so today we're going to actually begin in the book of Job in chapter 1 in just a moment. But I want to ask a question. If you watched the last video and I talked about how holiness doesn't happen on accident, I would just want to ask the question, since the last video, were you able to do better in your life in holiness and in purity? And if so, how did you do better? Was it something you accidentally did better on? Did you just stumble into a more pure life, or did you intend it to be so? Just something to think about. And as we try to make this point again today, we're going to notice once again that our purity happens purposefully. It doesn't happen on accident. It only happens when we intend to do something good, when we intend to become more pure. Only then can we actually start to achieve that goal. I want to kind of begin with the question, how many of us try to or have tried to in our life impress other people and want other people to look at us and think highly of us for various reasons? You know, want people to look at us and think, oh, that person's cool, that person's, neat, that person has whatever. So many times we find ourselves trying to impress others, and so it kind of just begs the question, who do we want to impress really? You know, I was thinking about this, and one of the and I'm not sure if this is the best way of wording this, but wouldn't it be an amazing thing if the one that we were trying to impress was God? Wouldn't that be an amazing thing if the things that we did, the life that we lived, impressed God? And not in the sense that he wants to try to be like us, but in the sense that he's proud of us. And so in using this, maybe again, it's not the best way to say this, but I want my life to be something that God is proud of. And I want to be, so I want to, in a sense, bear with me, be a hero for God. And I wanted to kind of show you a couple of people from the scriptures that were heroes, if you will. Someone that God held up as a person of great character. And so obviously one of the great persons of character in the scriptures is Job. And in Job chapter 1, verse 8, God says this to Satan about Job. He says in verse 8, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on earth? A blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil." So God lays out these characteristics of Job. He asks Satan, "Have you considered him? There's nobody like him on earth." And then God describes him blameless, upright, fear God, turns away from evil. And then, of course, we know the story, right? God allows Satan to put hardships on Job, taking away Job's wealth, taking away Job's livelihood, his servants, his camels, all of these things. And even to the extreme that Satan kills the 10 children of Job. And then after all of this, God is once again in the presence of Satan. And he once again says to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And he describes him in the exact same way. And then he even adds this description: he still holds fast his integrity. He still does. Even though you incited me, right? You incited me against him to destroy him. God says without reason, because Job had done nothing worthy of these afflictions. He says he still holds fast his integrity. So it kind of just makes me think, what would God say of us? What would he say of Nathan House? What would he say of you? What an amazing thing, what an amazing description that God holds Job up to Satan as a man of such great qualities, blameless, upright, fearing God, turns away from evil, holds fast his integrity in spite of everything he went through. Later on in the life of Job, as Job was having this back and forth with his friends, Job makes this comment in Job chapter 31, "I have made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze at a virgin?" You see, here's a man of great character, upright, righteous man, fearing God, turning away from evil. And Job in his own life says, "I've made a covenant." So he's made this promise, he's made this pledge, he's made this obligation to fulfill this promise, right? And what is significant about Job's covenant? First of all, it's significant because it shows that cleanliness, that purity, that holiness is a part of a relationship with God. And again, it does not happen on accident, does it? Job, how could Job possibly achieve these things? How could he possibly achieve a relationship with God from on high, with the Almighty? How could he possibly do that? It begins with this purposeful life. He's making a covenant. And second, it also reveals something else, which we'll see more of in a moment. But it also reveals this truth, that the eyes can be a gateway to the heart. And we'll see that more clearly in a minute. But really what we put into our eyes, what we listen to, the music we listen to, the things we watch on TV, the images we watch, look at our computer, the girls that walk by, and how do we respond to that? Not just girls for boys for girls or whatever. They can be a gateway to our heart, these things that we look at. Let's look at another Old Testament hero, if you will, somebody else that God certainly was proud of in his actions and what he did. In Genesis chapter 39, there's the story told of Joseph, who was sold by his brothers into slavery. They were jealous of him. They hated him. They sold him into slavery. He finds himself in the house of an Egyptian, Potiphar, the Egyptian. Potiphar's wife continually would throw herself at Joseph, this very handsome young man. And it says here in verse 7, after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph. He refused to be with his master's wife, and he says this to his master's wife, "He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he," talking about Potiphar, "kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife." Look at this question that Joseph says to Potiphar's wife. "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" How can I sin against God? You see, Joseph saw this as a sin against his Lord, his God. And he was unwilling to do this. Certainly here is another man, another hero from scriptures, another person that we can hold up. And here's another part of this that I want you to see. Potiphar's wife did not care at all about God, about Joseph's relationship with God. Potiphar's wife didn't care at all about the holiness of Joseph, what he was trying to attain. She didn't care. She was trying to derail him, sabotage him. And so it kind of begs a question. Do we help the opposite sex? Or do we, with their purity, with their goal of purity, or do we derail it? Girls, young women, ladies, do we dress immodestly? And it certainly boys can fall into that category of immodest dress too. But it is generally true, I believe, that boys will struggle more with what they see in this regard than girls. Nevertheless, girls, do you help your Christian brothers by your dress, or do you derail their goal of purity by what you bring? Even in, first of all, when you're going to school, when you're going to work, when you're shopping, do you dress immodestly? Even more so, when we come into church, and I have seen it, and you have as well, where the girls are dressed immodestly, even in the worship in the church. Boys, what about you? Are you modeling purity when you're pushing girls to do things they shouldn't do? Are you helping them at their goal of purity when you're trying to touch them and lay your hands upon them? So the question is do we help the opposite sex with their goal of purity? You see, Potiphar's wife, she did not care at all. One of the things we have to learn is that we need to care about the purity of others. Let's hop over to another passage. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 5. I want to begin here in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1. I want to read these verses. Paul writes, "Therefore be imitators of God." And this word imitators is we get our word mimic from this word. The Greek word is mimetes, right? Be one that mimics or imitates God. Well, why? Because we're his children. And as such, we should be looking like and trying to act like our God. He continues, "And walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." Let me ask you this. Are we walking in love when we derail the purity of others? Are we walking in love when we do things that take them off of their goal, that present temptations? And look at what he says in verse 3. "But sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness, I cannot talk this morning. 3 words here, right? 3 different Greek words. Just generics, porneia, sexual morality, impurity. This reminds us of pure in heart. Jesus talks about those who are pure in heart in the Beatitudes. The word impurity, I can't help but go back to the book of Leviticus that we looked at last week, as the book of Leviticus dealt so much with holiness and purity. But sexual immorality and impurity and covetousness, and normally covetousness does not necessarily have a sexual connotation. I think it is used by that, though, here, because of what Paul is including it with, when we are wanting something that does not belong to us, and I think, again, in a sexual way. He says, these things must not even be named among you as is proper among the saints. Let there be, then he adds to this, what the things that we say. There shouldn't be filthy talk, no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place. They don't belong in the place where the saints are. They don't belong in the place where God is, where we're trying to imitate God, where we're trying to walk in love. He said, these are out of place. Verse 5, for you may be sure of this, that everyone who is, and he uses those same three words, sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetous, that is an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Three words here that Paul is calling us to avoid in our life. And I want to hop over here to the New International Version and look at Ephesians 5:3 in the NIV, because I like how the NIV translates this. But among you, there must not even be a hint. The ESV says it, that look at the ESV. It says should not even be named among you. The NIV says there should not even be a hint of these things. Why? Because you're God's holy people. These are improper things for God's holy people. So you notice here what standard Paul calls us to. We are to be holy people. He describes the people that we are supposed to be as holy. The ESV uses the word saints. You see, as people who are trying to be holy people, like our God is holy, there should not even be a hint of sexual immorality. Let me ask, is this easy? Does this happen on accident? Let's hop over to another text here. Let's hop over to Matthew 5. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. Jesus says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. And again, we see this in the Ten Commandments. And again, we've seen this in the past, but Jesus will now take something that was very known, and he's going to give a much greater challenge and a more greater application, if you will. But I tell you that everyone who looks at a woman, and notice this, what did Job say? I've made a covenant with my eyes not to look at a woman. Jesus says, I tell you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. I made a comment earlier that our eyes are the gateway to the heart. And is that not revealed here in the words of Jesus? I tell you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And so Jesus then calls his followers to do extreme things. If your right eye is causing you to stumble, rip it out. If your right hand is causing you to stumble, cut it off. Why? Because it's better to lose a part of your body than for you to go into hell. Do extreme things. I don't think Jesus is calling us to literally rip out your eye or rip off your hand. And why the right hand? So it's not a literal application here. He's being figurative. The point he's trying to make is that we need to do extreme things. We need to do extreme things to make our life more pure. We need to do things that aren't easy. So how we're going to, again, do a couple more lessons on purity. But the question I want you to think about, and kind of a brief application from today, is this. How can we have purity? Number one, by making it our goal. By making it our goal to please God. Look at what Paul says here in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 9. He says, so whether we are home or away, look at this, we make it our aim, our goal, to please him. How can we attain purity? We have to make it our goal to please God, not ourselves. Job says, Job says in Job chapter 1, he made a covenant with his eyes. Look at this text again. I've made a covenant with my eyes. How then can I gaze at a virgin? Because of this, how can I please God? What would be my portion from God above? We have to make it our goal to please God. We want God to look at us and be proud of us, don't we? In the same way that we could see that God is clearly proud of Job, how we could know that God was proud of the young man Joseph who said, I can't sin against God. So the first point or application from this is this, make it our goal to please God. The second point, how do we attain this purity, is by purposing it. Job purposed for his eyes. Does a life that is pleasing to God happen on accident? Can we avoid even a hint of sexual immorality without purposing to do so? What areas in our life, what areas in your life do you need to purposefully do better in? What areas of your life do you need to make that goal more clear? Is it in how you dress? Is it in the movies you watch, the music you listen to, the things you look at on your phone or your computer? This week, let's make it our choice, our goal, to purpose purity in our lives. Thank you, and have a good day. God bless.